The room was buzzing with anticipation. Reporters from every major network filled the press hall, adjusting their microphones and setting up their cameras. The large ballroom at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. was meticulously prepared, a stage with two podiums bearing the American flag and the slogan, "Restoring America." Jonah, Trump's right-hand man, adjusted the microphone and glanced over his shoulder. "We're 5 minutes out. Are they ready?" Behind the stage curtain, Donald Trump stood next to Karoline Leavitt, both looking confident and unfazed by the noise outside. Karoline adjusted her blazer, visibly calm but focused. Trump gave her a reassuring smile. "Nervous?" Karoline shook her head. "Not really, more like ready to shut them up." Trump chuckled. "That's the spirit. They'll try to corner you. Just hit back harder. You've got the facts. Don't let them twist your words." Jonah returned, giving a quick nod. "We're ready when you are, sir." Trump gestured for Karoline to walk ahead. "Ladies first." As they stepped onto the stage, the room erupted with camera flashes and murmurs. The crowd was a mix of journalists, conservative supporters, and a few liberal media figures. Trump took his place at the center podium, Karoline to his right. He raised his hand, signaling for quiet, and the room slowly settled. "Good afternoon," Trump began, his voice resonant and confident. "Today, we're here to discuss something the media refuses to cover fairly: the truth about our country's direction and the relentless attacks on those who dare to speak it. And joining me is someone who knows firsthand what it's like to stand up to the machine, so Karoline Leavitt." Karoline gave a brief nod, her expression firm but respectful. Trump continued, "They've tried to tear her down, they've twisted her words, but she's tougher than they think. And together we're going to address the real issues that Americans care about, not the fake controversies cooked up by the mainstream media." The first question came from a reporter from the New York Times, a young woman with a determined look. "Mr. Trump, Ms. Leavitt, do you really think amplifying divisive rhetoric is helping America? Some argue your speeches have only fueled further division." Karoline stepped up first. "What's divisive is ignoring half the country. What's divisive is labeling anyone who questions the mainstream as a threat. I'm not dividing people. I'm giving a voice to those who feel silenced." Trump chimed in. "Exactly right. The media has spent years tearing down patriots and branding them as extremists. It's a joke. They want submission, not dialogue. That's why they hate people like Karoline, because she doesn't bow to their narrative." The next question came from a journalist at MSNBC. "Ms. Leavitt, you recently tweeted that liberal media thrives on division and manipulation. Do you really believe that? Or was it just to stir controversy?" Karoline looked directly at the journalist. "I absolutely believe it. Media outlets like yours only report one side, the side that fits your agenda. You can't handle differing opinions, and when you can't silence them, you smear them. That's not journalism, that's propaganda." Trump nodded in agreement. "She's right. You guys didn't even cover the recent violence at conservative rallies. But one angry tweet from a Trump supporter? Headline news. Hypocrites." Another journalist from CNN tried to interject. "Mr. Trump, Ms. Leavitt, how do you justify accusing the media of bias when you both regularly attack journalists on social media?" Trump leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "When the media lies, we call them out. Simple. You want respect? Earn it by telling the truth. The problem isn't us calling you out. It's you lying to the American people." Karoline added, "Criticism isn't an attack. Holding you accountable for misleading the public is our responsibility. If you can't handle that, maybe you're in the wrong business." The atmosphere grew tenser. Some journalists were clearly frustrated, while others scribbled notes furiously. The questions continued, each seemingly more pointed than the last. A voice from the back, a reporter from The Guardian, chimed in. "Ms. Leavitt, you've been accused of downplaying social justice issues. How do you respond to those who say you're out of touch with modern values?" Karoline didn't hesitate. "Modern values? You mean the obsession with victimhood? The refusal to acknowledge personal responsibility? I'm not out of touch. I'm grounded in reality. People are tired of being lectured about how terrible their country is. We're not perfect, but we're not irredeemable." Trump clapped lightly, grinning. "Perfectly said. They hate when you don't apologize. They hate when you fight back. That's why they fear people like Karoline. The final question of the segment came from a bold journalist from BuzzFeed. Mr. Trump, do you think Karoline Leavitt is the future of the Republican Party? Trump gave a thoughtful nod. She's the future because she's fearless. She doesn't cave to pressure. America needs leaders who stand up, speak out, and don't care about being politically correct. That's Karoline. That's why they hate her. The camera zoomed in on Karoline's resolute expression, and the atmosphere seemed to shift. The journalist knew that the real battle was about to begin, because the easy questions had just ended. The atmosphere in the room was becoming increasingly tense. After the first round of questions, it was clear that the journalists had regrouped during the break, sharpening their tactics to corner both Trump and Karoline Leavitt. Jake Monroe, a senior correspondent from CNN, stepped forward, his tone more confrontational. Mr. Trump, your support of Karoline Leavitt has raised questions about whether you're grooming her as a potential successor. Is this true? Are you trying to mold her into the next version of you? Trump smirked, adjusting his tie. Successor? No, I'm not grooming anyone. Karoline doesn't need that. She's strong, she's principled, and she fights for the American people. Maybe you should focus less on conspiracy theories and more on why people resonate with her message. Jake pressed on. But do you really think that someone with such controversial views about social justice and immigration can unite the party? Isn't she too polarizing? Karoline took the microphone before Trump could respond. Polarizing? That's a label you slap on anyone who doesn't toe your line. I don't sugarcoat the truth to make it palatable for liberal elites. If that makes me polarizing, fine. I'm more concerned about being honest. Trump pointed at Jake. And that's why they can't stand her. She tells it like it is. Your network, on the other hand, spins every conservative statement into hate speech. You've been doing it for years. Why don't you just admit it? A reporter from the Washington Post jumped in, not giving the pair a moment to breathe. Ms. Leavitt, your recent comments about feminism were seen as degrading and outdated. You said women need respect, not victimhood. Don't you think that statement dismisses the struggles of modern women? Karoline straightened up, her voice firm. Respect doesn't come from perpetual victimhood. It comes from standing on your own 2 feet and working hard. I'm not saying women don't face challenges. I'm saying the answer isn't blaming everyone else. Women are strong, capable, and intelligent. Stop treating us like we're too fragile to handle life. Trump nodded, visibly proud. Exactly. They want women to think they're always oppressed. It's a strategy to control, to manipulate. They hate strong women like Karoline because she doesn't buy into their nonsense. At that moment, a voice from the side, Brad Martin from Vice, called out with a mocking tone, Karoline, you talk about women being strong, but aren't you just parroting Trump's rhetoric to stay relevant? Do you even have your own identity? Trump's face darkened. Hey, watch your tone. Karoline doesn't need me to define her. She's built her own platform. You wouldn't ask a liberal woman the same question, would you? It's because she's conservative that you're trying to belittle her. Pathetic. Karoline gave a slight smile. Nice try, Brad, but I'm here because I've earned it. Unlike you, I don't need to tear others down to feel important. The room tensed further as a BuzzFeed reporter chimed in, clearly aiming to escalate. Mr. Trump, your recent comments about liberal cities being crime-infested wastelands were seen as deeply offensive. Do you regret making such a blanket statement? Trump leaned forward, unflinching. Offensive? No. Truthful? Yes. Look at the statistics. Look at what's happening in places like Chicago and San Francisco. Crime is skyrocketing, businesses are fleeing, and people are scared to walk the streets. You call it offensive because it doesn't fit your narrative, but facts don't care about your feelings. The reporter didn't back down. But don't you think statements like that only deepen divisions? Karoline interjected. Divisions were deepened when the media refused to report on the real problems. Trump calls it like it is because no one else will. Ignoring crime doesn't make it disappear. Your outrage won't change reality. Suddenly, a journalist from The Atlantic raised his voice. Mr. Trump, do you think Karoline Leavitt has a future in national politics? Or is she just your echo chamber? Trump scoffed. Echo chamber? She's got more guts than half of Congress. People follow her because she's not afraid to stand up to bullies like you. You hate her because you can't control her. That's the real issue here. The journalist pressed further. But don't you think supporting someone this divisive will hurt your legacy? Trump chuckled. You're worried about my legacy. My legacy is fighting for America. Karoline does the same. If being honest and patriotic is divisive to you, that's your problem. A younger reporter from NPR jumped in. Ms. Leavitt, do you really think being combative is the best way to inspire young voters? Caroline's eyes narrowed. Combative? You call defending freedom combative? Young people are tired of being told what to think. They're smart, resilient, and deserve to hear the truth without censorship. Maybe if you stopped underestimating them, you'd realize that. The tension was at its peak. Trump shot a glare at the reporters. You see what's happening here? They're not asking questions. They're making accusations. This isn't journalism. It's an ambush. You're attacking Karoline because she doesn't play by your rules. Some reporters started to shout over each other, clearly frustrated that they couldn't get the upper hand. One of them, a correspondent from The Guardian, shouted, "Do you really think you're saving America by promoting division?" Trump raised his voice, firm and unyielding. You're the ones promoting division. You call conservatives racist, sexist, and every other ist when you don't agree with them. We're here to stand up for the people you ignore, the ones who don't fit your elitist narrative. Karoline placed a hand on the podium. You accuse us of creating division, but you never once ask why millions feel abandoned by the system. Maybe if you listened instead of labeling, you'd understand. The room was practically vibrating with tension. A few reporters in the back whispered among themselves, seemingly unsure how to proceed. Just then, a voice from the crowd shouted, "We support you, Karoline," followed by scattered applause. Trump turned toward the sound, grinning. See, real Americans know what's at stake. They're not buying your nonsense. It was clear that the media couldn't break their resolve. Trump and Karoline remained steadfast, not backing down despite the barrage of attacks. And in that moment, it became evident. This wasn't just a press conference. It was a statement of resilience against a media that couldn't handle the truth.